So as we are transitioning into this fall season, we are getting so much harvest from our gardens and our farms, and you're finding so much fresh produce in the grocery store. So one of my favorite dishes to make with leftover sweet potatoes is a nice sweet potato gnocchi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple large sweet potatoes, start pricking some holes in them, and then seasoning them with some salt, pepper, and a little bit of oil. Then I'm going to wrap those up in some tin foil, and I'm going to put them in the oven to bake anywhere between an hour and a half on 400 or 425 until you can sort of stick a knife through them and they are nice and soft.
1 hour later.
So after our sweet potatoes come out of the oven, they are going to be super hot, so please make sure you don't burn yourself. Don't open them up too early. If you need to let them cool for half an hour, go ahead and do it. But then I'm just going to cut them open and I'm going to cut some slices into them. I just find it makes it easier for dumping out the guts into a large bowl, which is where we can start mashing. Now, the one thing is with your sweet potato, if it's not fully cooked through, rather than sticking it back into the oven, you can actually put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds to a minute, maybe a little longer if it's really not cooked, and then it has no problem mashing at all. So we're just going to mash those up, and then we're going to start seasoning it with some salt, some freshly ground pepper, and then lastly some garlic powder. After that, we're going to add in a little bit of dried basil and dried oregano from the garden, just for a little extra kick, and then we're going to add in some olive oil, just for that little bit of flavor, and it just helps the flour and everything come together. So next we're going to add a bunch of flour. You're going to add a little bit at a time, and you're going to need it, because the amount of flour that you need depends on the size of your sweet potatoes. So here I added about 2 cups, but I obviously need a lot more. I think in total I ended up adding about 6 cups of flour, so it did make quite a few portions. I think in total it made about 10 to 12 portions this batch. So remember, that is with 2 large sweet potatoes. After we're done sort of mixing in that flour, we can start mixing things by hand. So you're going to turn it out onto your countertop, and you're going to need for probably anywhere between 5 to maybe 10 minutes at most, until you sort of get this ball of dough that's nice, it's not really sticky anymore, and you get a little bit of a bounce back. Now, if it doesn't bounce back on you, that is a-okay. You're just going to need it a little more, you're going to put it into a nice ball, and then check again. And there we go, we have our nice little bounce back. Then we're going to cut it into individual portions, so I think my portions are generally set up for 2 to 3 people. So I ended up getting 5 balls out of this. I'm going to turn those each into a really long rope, and then after I do that, I can start cutting them. Now to make a long rope, you always start your hands in the middle, and then sort of push and roll on your way to the outside. After my long rope is made, I can start cutting them, and sometimes you might find they stick to the counter, so you're just going to use your finger and slightly roll them just to help them pick up. Now these probably aren't the nice gnocchi shapes that you're used to seeing, so in order to do that, if you don't have a special board, you can actually just use a fork and roll it down the fork a couple times to sort of get that corrugated rough shape on the outside. I find it does help to make the sauce stick, but I don't really think it's worth it, as it just takes a little bit too much time. But now that we've had all our gnocchi made, we can start bagging up the excess and put it in the freezers, because yes, this makes a great freezer meal that you can just pull out in the morning and then cook it later at night. So what is going to happen is we're going to start by placing them in boiling water, and then I like to just give them a little mix and to make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom of my pot, because I don't want anything to burn. After that, I'm going to let these gnocchi cook for anywhere between 3 to 8 minutes, depending on the size of them, until they start floating. Now, after they start floating and they're all done, you can start scooping them out. As you can see, it probably would have been easier for me to strain this, but I don't know why my thinking cap wasn't on. So I'm just going to move my tomato sauce over to my hot burner. I'm going to start putting my gnocchi in there with a little bit of the pasta water, sort of to serve as a binder. After that, I can toss my gnocchi in my sauce, get them all nice and coated. I'm going to heat it just for a few seconds more just to cook off any extra sauce, and then I can start plating up. So here you have it, some sweet potato gnocchi, perfect for the fall season. Enjoy, everyone!